Okay, so in this lesson we are going to do a some cleanup work and get our controls nice and clean, and then also set up the bind for the skeleton. So let's do that first. Just select the bind skeleton here, select the geometry, skin, bind skin, and in theory this should work. Yep, the IK looks good. Can adjust the elbow, and you can see how nice the twist is happening on the joints, so that is nice. Then we can also check the FK setup to make sure that is working correctly. So let's rotate, that looks good. Cool, that looks good. Now let's go about doing some cleanup here. So these controls would be nice to make sure that it goes around the geometry. So I'm just going to push F8 and expand this so that it is a little bit bigger and easier to select. I'm going to go to this geometry here, going to make it bigger, and I'm going to offset it this way. And this one I am going to make bigger as well. So there we go. I'm going to push F8 again to get out of component mode. And we can see, even though I offset this, it doesn't affect the pivot. It's exactly where we need it. It just looks a little bit nicer so that we can work with it easier. Now, other things that we would want to do, for example, are that these controls are FK controls, so we want to make sure that we can't access scale or rotation. Just makes it a little bit easier and cleaner. Also, we don't really need to access visibility because we have the control over here that is controlling that for us. So I'm just going to go here with the control selected that I want to affect, and right click and lock and hide selected. That makes it so that only our translates, which is not what I want. So I want to take these and these lock and hide selected. I just did an undo so that I can go do it because we only want rotations. So I'm going to repeat that process. There we go. These controls are clean. We may also want to consider going to the attribute and color coordinating these. This is going to be the left side, so we can set it up as object display, drawing overrides, enable overrides, and choose a color. Let's say I chose red. I'm going to do that for all the controls really quick. There we go. So we have red controls. You can make it a brighter red. That might be better, so it's easier to see. And save the darker red for kind of secondary controls or tertiary controls. There we go. Oops, missed that one. Let's try that again. There we go. So sometimes it doesn't change like that. If that happens, restart Maya. I'm not going to do that right now, but I found that in this version of Maya sometimes the drawing overrides doesn't read like it does here. Just restart Maya, open it up again, and it should change it for you just fine if you run across that issue. Let's do this control here, and let's make it yellow for our center controls. There we go. So that's yellow. I'm going to switch this over to IK controls. So with the IK controls, this one, because it controls would control the hand as well, I want to make sure that I only have the translate and rotate. And I'm going to lock and hide selected. Here on this control, I want to make sure that I only have translates because rotations don't do anything for this control. So I'm going to lock and hide those. I just pushed G to repeat the previous action. Maybe with this one I can go into my component mode by pushing F8 and make it a little bit bigger to have it easier to select. Get out of component mode. Boom. There you go. And maybe add the color to these as well in the attribute editor. Go red. There we go. So all of those are set. This one eventually we'll want it to control the scale and the size of everything. Actually, let's set that up now. Because if we take this and scale it, doesn't really do what we want because it's only scaling the controls. But we don't want it to scale everything either. So we do want it to scale the skeleton here, and we do want it to scale the IKs to go with it. We don't want it to touch the geometry. So I'm going to make these driven by the master control, which is down here. So let's go in and go to our connection editor. And I'm going to load the master control as the outputs because I'm going to take the outputs of the translate, rotate, and scale. And connect it to IKs and joint. So I'm going to load this side. So translate's going to go to translate and translate. Rotate's going to go to rotate and rotate. Scale is going to go to scale and scale. So what that will do for us is, if we scale this, we can uniformly scale our rig without having any issues. We can also move our rig and rotate it. We can position it and do anything we want with it. This control, we want to have access to everything. Yep, everything looks good there. Cool. The only other thing at this point that we may want to consider is taking the IK setup, turning the visibility off. The joints, that group, we want to turn the visibility off. And there we go. We have a clean version of our arm where we can animate. We'll only see the geometry. Maybe, yeah, with the geometry it's already locked, so that's good. If we draw a box around everything, we will select the geometry, but when you're animating, you can turn the geometry mask on your buttons up here on the shelf, and when you do that, you'll only select controls and be able to animate that way. Cool. So that's it for the basic setup for the arm. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in a future video, hopefully.